Good afternoon.
Hello.
Design Review Committee agenda for Thursday, May 13th.
You kind of blinked out there, Heather. Did you call for a roll call?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No,
Okay.
I'm standing by and waiting. Okay, committee member Bareneck,
Here.
vice chairperson Funk,
Here.
committee member Schmidt,
Yes.
committee member Vanden Eyck,
Here.
chairperson Newsom,
Yes.
all present.
Can I ask for an approval of agenda?
So move.
I'll make the second.
Call for that.
Who second?
Yes.
Dennis was the second.
Okay. Would you like me to do a roll call?
Yes.
Committee member Bareneck,
Yes.
vice chairperson Funk,
Yes.
committee member Schmidt,
Yes.
committee member Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
chairperson Newsom,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. At this time, we'll open it up to public comment. And this is for anything that is not on the agenda. And as we were speaking earlier, the best ways to communicate with us via public comment is going to be through our city emails or also a call-in number or clicking the raise hand in the chat. If you have anything that you'd like to discuss, we encourage the public to call 669-900-6833. Do we have anybody here that wants to speak on anything that's not on the agenda?
Just a reminder to everyone, if you do want to speak on something, go ahead and use the raise hand function through Zoom, or I don't see anyone on the phone, but if anyone's on the phone, go ahead and use *9, but I'm not seeing any hands.
Looking at the screen, I don't see anybody pop up yet either. And then there was a question asked whether or not we communicate via text. And once we're in a meeting, we typically turn all our electronics off other than our laptops. So if the public is looking for us to be corresponding or addressing them, it needs to be in the public comment forum. One, so it's on record. Two, so that we can make sure that you're communicating with us and we're having full attention in our meeting. So we'd like to hear what you have to say. Please give us a call. Again, it's 669-900-6833. I'm definitely looking forward to being in person again soon. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close public comment and we'll look at the consent calendar. Can we get approval of the April 29th draft minutes?
I will move to approve those minutes.
Okay.
I would second and request an addition to the minutes if the mover is willing. I thought we had consensus at the last meeting that we recommend that we ask the applicant to seek approval from the HOA for an agreement that would make the applicant responsible for maintenance of the streets of Cashin and Bliss between their entrances off of Santa Barbara Road or El Camino Real and the entrances to the parking lot.
Yes, so
Can't
we
get the
did.
requirement, as Kelly noted, because we can't control the HOA's willingness to accept that offer, but we could make that as a request.
The motion maker agrees with that condition.
Now, just for clarification, was that intended to be a condition? In other words, something we put in a letter to the applicant that they need to have, or was that intended to be just a noted in the minutes that get carried forward to the Planning Commission? Either way is fine.
Your call would be the best on that. The intent is to communicate that formally with the applicant, that is an expectation of this committee. But the intent is not to to make it a condition that that they enter into that agreement,
Mhm.
because we don't control the behavior of the other party
Yes.
to that.
Yes, but that they seek that, but they have that.
But they
conversation.
seek it, yes.
Yes, and Kelly, just asking staff, if we have prepared an action letter for the applicant yet on that.
I think that we have, we didn't necessarily include that, but that has been an ongoing discussion with the applicants, and they are aware that that will be a condition as part of their use permit approval. So we didn't necessarily see it as a design review committee issue, so it wasn't necessarily included as a design condition. But we have had that conversation with the applicant since the beginning of the project, and they are aware that they will need to try and enter into a maintenance agreement with the HOA in a
Okay.
quick fashion for those.
And then also it'll be in the minutes as reflected so that we have that direction as we move forward. So that's good. Okay,
Great, thank you.
very good. Thank you.
So the motion maker had agreed with the second, and we had not had a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Committee Member Bearneck,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Funk,
Yes,
Committee Member Schmidt,
Yes,
Committee Member Vanden Eyck,
Yes,
Chairperson Newsom,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. I wanted to thank my current colleague for filling in for me. My daughter had a life-threatening issue a couple weeks ago, and we were in the hospital, and thanks to the technologies at Sierra Vista, we weren't airlifted, and she returned to normal within a few days. So thank you for the kind thoughts and prayers, and thanks for filling in. It's always hard to be a mom and a working mom at that, so I appreciate it. Every project that comes to DRC is important, and we want to get on to the next project. So design and neighborhood compatibility review of Del Rio Ranch, located on the former Walmart site at 2055 El Camino Real. And the screen just moved. Are you doing the presentation, Kelly?
Yes.
Kelly's gonna
Okay.
do this one, yes. And she's got this project pretty much wired down in terms of what's
Well-
all the moving parts. There's a lot here, though.
We'll see. There's a lot that keep moving too. So this is the Del Rio Ranch project on the former Walmart site located at the intersection of Del Rio Road and El Camino Real. The site does go all the way up to Rio Rita Road. So the general plan designation is general commercial, and there's also a high density residential portion of the site that exists today over in this location, sort of to the southeast. The zoning over a majority of the site is commercial retail, and then there is that high density residential zoning as well. And then the entire thing is overlaid with the specific plan 2 designation. It's about 26 acres in size. A little bit on the site history. The specific plan was approved in 2012 originally. There was a Walmart store that was part of that specific plan development, 3 acres of high density residential development that was to have a conditional use permit at a later date. And then 2 commercial pads for retail or restaurant development that were up closer to El Camino Real on the south side of the property. The specific plan was then updated in 2020. What we mainly did is modified the list of allowable uses to make it a little bit more flexible for development within that commercial retail zone. The original specific plan was very specific to Walmart, even had, the drainage requirements in there and things that were very specific to the Walmart development. So as Walmart pulled out of the property and canceled their permits, we did do some amendments to the specific plan that would allow for more flexible development within the commercial retail zoning district and be consistent with our vision for the Del Rio area. And so we did receive an application for Del Rio Ranch for the concept earlier this year. That did go to City Council for authorization to proceed. One of the main reasons that it did that was that we are moving the residentially zoned portion of the property if this application moves forward. And that does trigger a general plan amendment. So by council policy, we bring all general plan amendments to council for authorization prior to working on them. But the majority of the site is going to remain commercial and be developed within the requirements of the commercial retail zoning district and the specific plan overlay. So what they're proposing is an entertainment-based commercial center with a large commercial presence at the corner of Del Rio Road and El Camino Real. They do have some uses such as an outdoor amphitheater, and they are incorporating a parking garage to take care of most of their parking requirements. They
Wow.
have a tourist resort component. So this includes a hotel. It also includes an RV park, and part of the RV park are potentials for cabins, permanently affixed Airstream trailers, things of that nature to help enhance the tourism of the site. So the actions that we're looking at in terms of the project as a whole is the general plan amendment to relocate the residentially zoned portion of the property. There will also be a slight increase just based on the circulation layout of the property to that residentially zoned area. The specific plan amendment, we're looking at a circulation amendment mostly to the required public road that was part of the original specific plan approval. And then the adjustment to the residential portion is also included in that specific plan. And then we have a master plan of development. So the specific plan requires a master plan of development be approved for all portions of the site. The applicants are taking sort of a phased master plan of development approach to this project. It's a really large project and there's a lot of different pieces on it. So what they're doing is sort of doing an overall master plan of development for the project concept. And then some of the different phases will come back for levels of review at a later date when they further refine that concept on the site. So for example, the residential portion consistent with the current specific plan will come back for use permit approval through Planning Commission at a later date when that is more detailed. And some of the other uses will come back for DRC approval when they've refined their architectural components a little bit more. Those would be sort of the entertainment center, which is currently allowed in the zoning district, but will need some final architectural review before they move forward. So part of the master plan of development concept will also approve certain uses that are listed as conditionally allowed uses on the site. So that does include the RV resort concept, the mixed use commercial buildings along the El Camino frontage that do have second and third floor residential uses, and the conference center. So this is the proposed project concept. We actually just have a few slides because most of the meat of it is this slide. So up at the top in that sort of yellow portion is the residential portion of the site. You can see that originally it was towards the southeast corner, and the current proposal is to line Rio Rita Road with the residentially zoned portion. This provides some buffering from the commercial project and also allows the applicants to work with the topography a little bit more for their resort and entertainment concept. So that acreage does increase to 3.6 acres from 3 acres. Part of that was due to the alignment of Obispo Road that staff feels pretty strongly about in order to have neighborhood connectivity to properties to the south, which was part of the original specific plan idea in terms of a regional circulation plan. And then towards the corner of Del Rio and El Camino, we have a 30,000 square foot entertainment commercial center. There's an attached parking structure associated with that. The applicants are hoping to create a more pedestrian oriented environment. And so they want to keep the parking consolidated and out of view as much as possible. And then along El Camino Real, there are a couple of retail, light industrial, artisan type spaces that would have residential units on the second and third floor. And then along Del Rio here, there would be kind of a conference center, fairly small scale conference center, but something that could provide meeting rooms and meeting spaces for the community to use. And then towards the middle of the site is the tourist serving uses. So this blue area here is the RV resort area. They do have a check-in building proposed. Along the edges is where they envision some of the fixed tourist uses to be, such as like a vintage VW village and an Airstream area over here, some glamping, and then some cottages next to a pond that they're hoping to create. And then anchoring that between the entertainment center and the RV is the hotel use. And they do have a concept that also wraps some of the hotel buildings and rooms at the top of the amphitheater. And then the amphitheater is kind of central to the site where the topography allows for it to be, it's just sort of part of the natural land out there and maintain some of the existing oak trees around it. So the RV resort currently is about 4.9 acres of land. The specific plan did limit RV resort to about 20% of the site, which is about 5.2 acres. So they are below that in terms of the RV parking spaces. They're also proposing the hotel for about 100 rooms. And then there are additional sort of glamping spaces, which would be considered consistent sort of with a hotel use because they are stationary around the edge of the site. So this is the design theme that was approved in the specific plan that all of these projects need to be consistent with. So the theme that was approved in the specific plan was sort of contemporary agrarian. They had some gable roof features, a lot of metal siding, a lot of large storefront windows, the use of wood and those kind of natural materials as accents, some concrete features as well. And so you can kind of see some renderings that exhibited some of those design features for the Del Rio specific plan. And then this is the proposed commercial design concept that they're moving forward with. So you can see a lot of the materials are similar to the specific plan materials in terms of the wood accents. They do have some metal features and some concrete features. This in particular, the one on the top, is the concept for the convention or for the entertainment center, which also includes the attached parking garage. And you can see they're trying to detail the ground floor of the parking garage so that it doesn't look like a parking garage. And then this building down here is one of the buildings that would line El Camino Real and have the retail spaces on the bottom and the residential above. And then this image shows the proposed conference center. And you can see some of those concrete accents and metal trellis features added, as well as the clear story windows. So they do have a mixture of a lot of the materials that are called out in the Del Rio specific plan. Again, these are preliminary concept plans, and so some recommendations might include, for consistency with the specific plan, adding some vertical accents at the corners of the mixed use buildings and the parking garage, and maybe some inclusion of some vertical metal siding for consistency. So this is their glamping concept. So these are the uses that are kind of around the RV portion of the project, just to kind of give you an idea of what those might look like. So that the sort of the top image is what they're maybe envisioning for near the pond that they're creating. Of course, some vintage VWs where Phil and his family are going to stay a lot of the time. And then the glamping sites down here, which are kind of like a hard-sided tent, if you will, and kind of more of a modern theme in order to sort of meet building code for those hotel units. So in terms of height, the applicants are requesting in general a height exception for the more commercial portion of the project. Our current height standards in the commercial zone are 35 feet. And most of their buildings will stay within that 35-foot range. We do measure from average finished grade. The hotel will be slightly sunken into the site. The total height for the hotel is anticipated to be about 45 feet. It would be less when measured from average finished grade based on the topography. And then their retail spaces along El Camino with the residential above are anticipated to be about 45 feet. So that is in excess of our current height requirements and will require a height exception for that. It's important to note in terms of neighborhood compatibility that these buildings where they're increasing height are located towards El Camino Real and away from existing single-family residential uses. Because of the site topography, these buildings will also not be as visible from residential areas that are located at a higher elevation along Rio Rita and beyond. This is their preliminary landscape concept. With each phase of development, they'll be required to come in with a more refined concept. But in general, they are looking to add significant landscaping to the site, some street trees along all of the streets, and trees throughout the common plaza spaces and areas. They also, because of the terracing of the RV parking areas to use the natural site topography, they also have a landscape concept that includes screening of any walls that would need to be erected from there, and also creating privacy for those RV spaces at the same time. So in terms of next steps, we are looking for DRC to make a recommendation to Planning Commission, including the design concepts, and it's important to note that this is a higher level master plan of development. So each phase of development will either require DRC or in some cases Planning Commission approval prior to moving forward to building permit. So this will not be the last time that the project is reviewed, but it is such a large scale that they kind of need to move forward with a concept before they can dial down to the details. So our conditions of approval will be written that way for the development. And so you will likely see pieces of this development again as it comes forward in a more refined way. And then City Council will be the final action on this concept based on the general plan amendment and changes to the specific plan.
And Kelly, if I can just jump in real quick on that second bullet you just mentioned, because that's really critical, I think, in guiding the DRC today in their review of this project, that it's a lot to digest. And I guess we don't have to worry as much because you're not granting approval to any of these things on the property with today's hearing. We're giving general review of the whole concept with each of these pieces to come back as they actually do move forward for actual permitting and construction permits. But still, we're looking for a DRC action on the whole overall picture, but without getting down into the infinite details, I'll say. So that's kind of a critical thing in the review process today. Just wanted to highlight that issue to help you in your discussions today.
Thank you, Phil. Does my committee members have any questions for staff? Dennis.
Yeah, with respect to the whole master development scheme that's being discussed, is it envisioned that, I mean, whenever I've dealt with things like this, there's always, not everyone can see at the end of the tunnel. So there's always sometimes desired changes to the uses that are being defined. Is it anticipated that if something like that occurs, does the entire project come back forward to see that there's some type of consistency between a change or not within the project, or would those be dealt with individually? What do you envision?
So I think it depends sort of on the level of change. So I think it's important to note that the underlying zoning is commercial retail. And so if the entertainment center goes away, which is what they would sort of receive use permit approval for, and they were to come in with a concept that met the circulation layout that was approved as part of this concept and didn't really change much in terms of architecture, and they came in with allowed uses, that might not trigger a master plan of development amendment. That might just trigger a consistency review. If they came in with something vastly different in terms of layout and the site circulation, or if they came in with another use that would trigger a conditional use permit, then that would sort of trigger an additional layer of discretionary review.
I think it's also important to mention when we did the recent big specific plan amendment, we really refined the list of land uses that can occur here to try and reduce the traffic and to try and gear it towards what's compatible with this site. So it's, we eliminated, for example, the fuel stations and fast food drive-through restaurants, and but we do allow things like business park, and we do allow retail. And so land uses could change here over time, as long as the overall concept and building design doesn't change. And it's probably okay as long as it's consistent, just like Kelly said, with that specific plan. So that's probably a really good point to bring up. You know, if that entertainment building changes into another land use that's allowed in a specific plan, it could probably occur as long as it doesn't trigger other environmental impacts like traffic issues. Very, very good point.
On the Walmart project, there was a massive grading project to balance the site. I'm not seeing that on here. In fact, along El Camino Real, the retail condos were being shown basically at grade at the street level.
Yeah. Could you go back to that site plan, Kelly?
Is there
That's a key thing on this.
any discussion about grading and potential importing or moving soil off the site to try to make it work?
Yeah, so the applicants have submitted a preliminary grading and drainage plan that we are currently reviewing. Their goal is to work with the natural topography as much as possible. Obviously, we have some roadway slopes that we have to maintain for emergency services and to make sure that the RVs can get through the site properly. But other than that, they are hoping to build with the site topography as much as possible.
on the corner of Del Rito and El Camino Real where the parking structure is, what is that little stub street that is just below A at that
I
location?
believe, the applicants can probably answer that, but I believe that's a pedestrian connection onto the site. So there's kind of a rear pedestrian connection.
And then the dash lines that are, says where the plaza is, there's a bunch of dash lines in there. Do they
Sure, I
represent
think-
anything?
Yeah, those are showing sort of accessible paths and pedestrian connectivity to the entrances and fronts of each building.
As far as the RV and large lodging resort, is that to be private, or are they trying to get a state licensed facility at all in there? Do you know?
My understanding that it would be private, but I know the applicants are on the phone and can probably answer that during public comment.
Okay. I'm imagining that hash line around Rio Rito Road is a non-access strip to that road from the future residential area?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what the hash line means, but we have done sort of a lot of research in the past on Rio Rita Road, and I believe that it is not a public road, it is a private road, and so they would not have access rights to that road. And at this point, the applicant is anticipating all of the residential connecting to the new Obispo Road extension and providing some landscape buffering between their future residential development and the Rio Rita Road area.
And then lastly, the amphitheater. So what is the vision for the amphitheater? Is it all encompassing? Is it involve lights and electricity and sound?
Yeah, the applicants can best speak to that. I think that they are anticipating throughout the development some decorative lighting, possibly some stage lighting, and probably some amplified sound. Part of neighborhood compatibility and the conditions that we apply to the project will be hours of operation for something like that, especially when it comes to amplified music. So I know in speaking with the applicants, and they can probably expand on this more, they are looking for sort of compatible use of the amphitheater. I don't think they're looking for a Greek theater or even a Wiener Robles type environment.
Something like the Solvang Shakespeare Theater would be nice. It's a little concerned about the amphitheater in terms of, I know that the applicant wants to make it as friendly as possible, but my experience with a lot of those facilities are the sound people who operate the hardware at these things, and it always seems like there's this level of sound that they tried to get that is just below total disruption, but yet it still can be understood. And so I'm a little concerned because, again, that seems to be the norm at every concert or every venue that I go to, is that the sound is often so loud that it's unbearable, and I bring earplugs so I can hear normally at those events. So
One
anyway,
thing I will note, which obviously doesn't have to do with people running the sound equipment during an event, is that the applicants are required to do a sound analysis for the amphitheater. So they're going to have a consultant look at the sound and the impacts to the existing neighborhoods based on the shape and the topography of the amphitheater, and then recommend any additional mitigating sound features that might be required.
and again, is that going to be a conditional use or an allowable use under the master plan?
So this would be an allowable use, and through this this master plan approval, we would set conditions such as hours of operation, amplified music hours of operation, and then their sound study will be completed prior to planning commission. And so we'll be able to condition any additional sound mitigation that comes out of that study.
Under as an allowed use, not that we enforce conditional use permits that well in our city, but at least there's a hammer when you have, or a stick, that when you have a conditional use, that you're going to pull it away if in this case sound gets too loud. So although we're going to do these studies and we're going to show that it can be compatible within the neighborhood, what ability do the neighbors have to try to get the noise, if it gets too loud, to an acceptable behavior?
So the
And
master
vision-
plan of development acts as a conditional use permit for the entire development concept. And so conditions will be included on this master plan of development that regulate the amphitheater use.
So then that would be if the conditions aren't met, then complaints can be heard.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm muted. Sorry. Susan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Continuing on with that question, a similar issue arose at City Council with regard to a speaker, an ordering speaker at the Human Bean restaurant, and it was coffee shop, and it was noted that the council had placed some requirements previously when a amplified speaker was used in the drive-through for the Walgreens property. So and I recall roughly the solution in both of those situations was to have a sort of a review later on to see how things are going and if there were complaints or issues with the neighborhood. So is it possible to set that up in a similar fashion?
Certainly,
yeah, I think
that's-
we can, do a check-in on the amphitheater. And in theory, the amphitheaters that are designed with the topography should be bouncing the sound back towards the El Camino intersection. Obviously, there's going to be some buildings, and it might bounce a little bit back and forth, but the concept is that the surrounding neighborhoods are up at a high enough elevation where that sound attenuation and bounce back will work with the natural topography to mitigate sound intrusion to the neighborhood areas.
And I think another issue with those sound studies is it oftentimes sound is measured as an average over a large period of time. And a 24-hour average or a 12-hour average would not be meaningful if what we're concerned is what's the level of sound that's occurring, on average within a 30-minute period or 15-minute period when they're doing amplified music.
Yeah, I think that for most uses, drive-throughs and things like that, where they have speakers that are just constantly going, that's kind of how sound studies are run. For something specific like an amphitheater or a concert venue, then the sound analysis will be looking specifically at those types of use times.
Okay, great. Can you clarify what's envisioned in terms of fencing? I'm not sure if that's
Around the property edges or throughout?
Around the property edges.
Yeah, I think the applicant can probably best respond to that. I don't know. I think the south end of the property is probably kind of what you're talking about. I'm not sure that we envision any fencing along El Camino Real or Del Rio. And then the residential portion will come in later for a use permit application and be reviewed with that.
I don't think we've seen any fence plans yet, have we, Kelly, at all?
No, the only place I could see where there might be fencing would be the south side of the property.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten down to that level of detail yet, really, but it's a good comment.
And that's fine. In terms of fencing, in particular on the south end, with the pond, has consideration been given to how that pond, which is pretty close to and within easy walking distance of small kids who might be living in the Emerald Ridge or in the planned people self-help housing development or in the whatever happens in the property immediately to the south, which is zoned for high density residential. So we've got kids walking through that area. Is consideration been given to what kind of protection we need to make sure that they don't drown in that pond?
I don't think we've gotten to that level yet either. I mean, the building code typically for a pool is going to require fencing and alarms, right? But I think back to the Lakes project, we didn't require that because of the natural lakes. What do you know about that, Kelly?
I don't know too much about that, but I will say that we are still analyzing their final grading and drainage plan, and it appears as though they might need to have a stormwater retention basin in that area, which would obviously negate them being able to use that as a full-time pond. And then, of course, we have fencing standards associated with basins based on the depth of water that they would need to follow. And we would obviously try and have it not be a fenced basin if it were being used for that. So I think there are ways to unfence a natural pond or install fencing like a split rail, that's not quite the, chain link or security fencing that can still look naturalized, but still, protect people from going where they shouldn't be going.
Sure. And I do note that in the lakes, the overall development is fenced and gated from most the common approach perspectives, but folks who are residential within the development are responsible for looking after their own family members. So, okay. The height request for the buildings that are there closest to El Camino Real. Can you compare the desired or the requested height at this for the plan with the height over at the Home to Suites motel across the way?
Maybe Phil can pull that up real quick. I can't do that while I have a presentation up on the screen, but I believe that they also requested a height exception. I believe that they are slightly taller, but I cannot confirm that. They did go, it's a 4-story hotel, so they did go.
I'm gonna go to a hard copy of the plans that I have right here. Hold on, that's Colony Square. I have one
That's
more
the
though.
other
Hold
one.
on, let me find that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what they were because I know that
I feel like they were at the 50-foot range, but honestly, I didn't work on the project, so that's.
they had some taller elements on them. Let's take a look. I've got that. That's always a good comparison though. Proposed max height was 49 feet on the hotel. So the hotel's 49, while this is 45 at the very peak.
It's important. I think it's important to note that, while they're saying 45 feet in their concept, we do want to make sure that we have some flexibility to allow them to do some tower features or some different roof forms that add architectural interest to the project, without allowing, a more massive structure. So 45 feet is generally sort of the occupiable area. And then,
Just so we know what we're comparing
that.
to,
Mhm.
that's what you're talking about. And I think this tower feature actually exceeded 49.
It says 55 to top of roof.
Heather, you obviously either have a plan with you or your eyes are really good.
Cyborg eyes.
I wish I missed the full-scale plans. It's really hard to read the tiny print that we have right here. I can imagine what everybody else is trying to do online. So
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That gives me enough information about the perspective to, for my current needs. And then I want to ask about the traffic flow and the extent that we've looked at it. Is the intent to which, as I was looking at this, is that the folks who live in the residential portion are going to use Obispo Road, and the expectation would be that flow generally is going to come directly from Obispo Road to Del Rio Road.
To a certain degree, we haven't received their traffic analysis yet. We've done a site visit and there are some site distance concerns turning left out of their proposed Del Rio Road or Obispo Road onto Del Rio because of the way the road curves back towards Rio Rita. So we don't know yet if that's going to be a completely free movement exit. We are hoping the road that connects down to El Camino Real is required to be signalized as part of the specific plan. And having that be a signalized road, we are encouraging the applicants to make that most southern road even out the curve a little bit and make that a slightly more direct route so that could also be a main connector for the residential portion down to El Camino Real with unrestricted turning movements at the signal.
That I think would be very, very helpful, although we'll get to comments later. But my, if that, will the traffic plan address that flow? If that particular exit from the property is only for right turns, I mean, there's not much there. You're dumping you're dumping whatever traffic you have onto a very narrow, windy street that gets a lot of deer.
Yeah, I think our vision is to retain the right outs there, mostly for those residents to be able to head to San Benito School efficiently.
Right.
But I don't anticipate, a lot of other use other than, visiting friends and the way that most residential uses kind of use the roads in the back portions of the city. So we are trying to strengthen that connection to El Camino Real for other traffic needs.
Yeah, okay, that's, I think, consideration of that. So has consideration been given to making that intersection between Obispo Road and Del Rio a signalized intersection?
It's a little bit close to the Del Rio Road intersection and El Camino Real. There's kind of some queuing issues there. The traffic analysis, we've asked them to look at, everything, how do we help queuing? How do we ensure that people can turn out of certain driveways unrestricted so that we can spread out the traffic? And so the traffic analysis is looking at that, but we don't anticipate that would be signalized or a stop intersection.
But we still don't know. So I guess
We still don't know. It is envisioned that entrance will align with an entrance across Del Rio Road in the potential future business park development on that side. So we are looking at ensuring that traffic and driveway entrances on both sites are working together.
I guess what we do know is that there will be a signal at El Camino Real, which is already approved in a specific plan at the other entrance. But in terms of Obispo and El Camino or Del Rio, it's hard to say.
Okay.
In a perfect world, there would be a left out there, though. But I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't tell you that can work.
Yeah. In an imperfect will, there will be lefts out of there. Unless it's physically prohibited, that is going to get used that way because that's the natural direction that most people are going to want to go.
I hear you on that. Yes, exactly.
So I think we need to be cognizant that if that's going to be a problem in terms of traffic dangers and sightlines, that the alternative of easy getting to the signalized intersection at El Camino Real should work very comfortably for the folks living in there because otherwise it won't get used.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we do have a right out only situation, I think we have some design thoughts that could greatly enhance the right out only sort of model a little differently than sort of our standard pork chop or sign that says please don't go left. So
Yeah, no.
That's it.
I can think about Nick talking about pork chops.
Yeah.
Is that all of your questions, Susan?
Yeah, that covers my questions here for now.
Okay. Emily.
I do have one, wondering about and understanding it's a higher level master plan of development that we're reviewing at this point, but also that it's to be phased. Do we have an idea of what those phases are and what's being prioritized yet?
We do have an idea, and I don't know if I'm gonna tell you correctly. I believe they're looking at sort of the commercial and RV to sort of be part of the first phase. They're kind of integral together. They want to make sure that the tourists kind of have a place to go and hang out, and that the locals have some presence on the site as well. And then I think later phases include the residential, and then the hotel and amphitheater and conference center when they sort of build the use and are ready to go with those. But they can probably be more specific during public comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
That's interesting discussion, especially like with the Dove Creek area about the timing of what develops first and second. Kind of makes me think about that.
Jeff, Amanda Nyckoff?
The most of the questions I had actually been covered by the committee members. I don't have anything right now. I kind of like to hear from the applicant though.
Yes, I feel like I'm the same as you. All of my notes have check marks next to them. Can we speak with the applicant now, Kelly?
Yeah, I think Mariah will help us bring Don Love as their architect. I see Jack Phelan on the phone. I see Ted Lawton on the phone. So those should be the three, Mariah, unless anybody else wants to raise their hand that I missed. Ken Brown is on the phone.
There we go.
I don't know if you guys want to speak.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ted.
So I do have a presentation. Is there a way to share screens or, there we go. There we go. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if that happened.
It looks like Ken has a question too, while you're doing that, Ted.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm here.
Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It was a little bit confusing that I could hear you, see you, but not talk.
Well, we see you as a black box. Does that matter?
That's fine with me. I don't appear, looks like you have the video settings for me blocked, so that's fine.
Could we have
And then
the team introduced as to which individuals or what do they, how do they fit in within in this picture?
Ted, are you there?
yes, let's see, is my screen visible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and we can answer
And Ted,
Committee Member Schmidt's question about who's here to represent the project today. We do see Ted Lawton, Jack Phelan, and we do see Don Love, the architect, and Ken Brown is part of that.
Yeah, so we also have Ron Riley. I think Ken, I think he's probably on as well. Then we also have Wes Arola with landscaping, and then Jack and Jenny, they're both here with me at our office here in Atascadero.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, Kelly, wonderful presentation. I really appreciate all the effort and work that you put into those staff reports, and you did a fantastic job summarizing the project, the overall concept. I'd like to kind of dive into maybe a little bit more of the details, if you don't mind. So, hello, DRC members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ted Lawton from Cal Coastal Communities. We are a small local real estate company, and a large portion of our team live, work, and own businesses here in Atascadero. Our team is focused on creating, growing, and supporting this local community. We're focused on creating projects that complement the city of Atascadero's goals and initiatives for economic development and community engagement. We really appreciate this opportunity today to share with you our proposed project at the corner of Del Rio and El Camino Real. This afternoon, we are very excited to present the Del Rio Ranch Commercial Resort Community. For us, this project has been many years in the making, and we feel so fortunate to finally present and discuss the project with you here today. We really believe that our project is the future of commercial real estate. And with that said, I'm going to move on to our next slide. This is the big box Walmart store, which was fully approved and entitled by the city. Some things we wanted to point out is this project would have graded the entire site down approximately 75 to 100 feet, removing almost the entire hillside. It would have removed all of the beautiful heritage oak trees, many of which are hundreds of years old. It would have created a higher traffic impact on the existing area and surrounding neighborhoods. And ironically, Walmart already allows for overnight RV parking on their 6-acre parking lot, which would have not provided any TOT to the city. So this is in stark contrast to our revised project and project concept that we're proposing here today that focuses on bringing residents and visitors of Atascadero together in a community-centric design. allowing for many amenity-rich opportunities and providing the ideal setting for memorable experiences. We are able to accomplish this by creating large outdoor open space areas, protecting the existing heritage oak trees, providing for much needed entertainment and dining options, encouraging visitors to come and enjoy Atascadero, its small town and local businesses, producing more revenue for the city than a big box Walmart store would have done. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. Providing a place for local artists to display and showcase their talents, be it a small pop-up, jewelry shop, a local band, or other type of local performances. I think Dennis had mentioned a Shakespeare festival. That's exactly what we're looking to do with this site. And then ultimately providing a place for Atascadero residents to gather, enjoy one another, and meet new guests in an atmosphere of family fun, leisure, and relaxation. So let's talk about the problem or the elephant in the room. There is a lot of existing retail vacancy in Atascadero and all across small town USA. And it would be correct to be concerned about adding more retail to the existing vacant retail inventory in Atascadero. However, there is a very big difference between the existing vacant retail spaces than the plan we are proposing. Across the country, cities and developers are finding very creative ways to reactivate these undesirable retail spaces by adopting new business plans, concepts, and creative uses with ideas like creating small artisan collectives or neighborhoods, creating specialty craft, specialty communities, creating hybrid mixed-use redevelopments by adding residential or other lodging components in old commercial retail centers. Also by starting, small micro business centers or startup incubators. There's also, integrating very creative retail like container parks or container villages, food courts, and other types of fun lodging. How to revive old, tired retail spaces is another entire presentation altogether. What cities have successfully discovered is that old, obsolescent properties can be revitalized by adding vibrant, mixed indoor-outdoor uses focused on experience, activities, and quality of life are wildly becoming successful. The point is that the commercial retail of the future looks a lot more like an indoor-outdoor farmer's market full of fun activities rather than a large commercial strip mall or big box store. This slide here illustrates a small excerpt from the multiple pages of deed restrictions placed on the property by Walmart. These deed restrictions presented an enormous challenge for our team, as it would be for any other future buyer interested in developing this commercial property. Initially, it was very difficult to come up with a viable commercial program that would pencil. However, our team, through hundreds of hours of creative strategy, planning sessions, and design review concepts, was able to create a commercial project that would be both economically feasible and a commercial program that actually exceeds the revenue generated by the approved large big box store for the city of Atascadero. This took our team a very long time to create, strategize, and negotiate with Walmart for acceptance and approval. We successfully accomplished this, and once we received approval from Walmart, we started this project with some very specific goals and objectives. The first was understanding how important this site is to the city of Atascadero, especially in how it will help the city achieve its overall strategic economic plan. In order to do so, we started with studying the amount of commercial development we believe this site can support, given today's current commercial retail market demand, the impacts from the Amazon effect, and the existing amount of commercial vacancy currently in Atascadero. Secondly, we use the sales tax revenue from the originally approved big box store as our baseline for the site that the city was expecting to receive. Our research indicated that this amount would have been approximately $500,000 to $600,000 per year in sales tax revenue. When we strategize ways to increase the amount of revenue the site could generate, in addition to the baseline sales tax amount, we accomplish this by incorporating a large TOT component onto the project development and design plan that was not part of the originally approved master plan. In doing so, we found that the project could more than double the city's potential revenue as compared to the original approved big box film. We're able to achieve this by focusing on the currently untapped tourism market for recreational lodging based on the amount of RVs that already pass by the city of Atascadero on the 101 corridor on any given day, going between Paso, Pismo, and the Valley. Another significant part of the overall project plan was to create a fun and safe entertainment family atmosphere for the city of Atascadero, its residents, guests, and younger youth population. We believe that by doing so, it will also attract more head of household jobs, businesses, and people looking to live and work here in Atascadero. Finally, the project will also bring much needed dining and entertainment options to local residents of Atascadero and its guests. Some of the other commercial site considerations that we focus on are included, such as focusing on creating amazing indoor-outdoor experiences for our local community and visitors, providing retail-friendly leasing opportunities through shared services on site and smaller storefronts, making it possible for smaller stores to get a foot in the door and grow their business and grow roots, attracting a wide mix of retailers that would provide a one-stop shopping opportunity for Atascadero residents, and creating a food and craft beverage village center. Also allowing for open air opportunities like outdoor pop-up markets, outdoor dining, outdoor entertainment, outdoor recreational uses, designing open space green belts and walking trails that include lots of outdoor recreational activities as well, which we'll show here later on in the presentation. So here on this slide is some of our proposed commercial programming for Del Rio Ranch that will be made up of a wide variety of commercial retail shops, craft beverages and food options, as well as other service-based businesses. For example, in order to create the one-stop shopping opportunity, it is important to provide a large, diverse retail program that must also comply with Walmart's limiting deed restrictions. For example, a pet groomer, or a yoga art studio, or an art studio, kids care program, like a kids climbing wall, a coffee shop, a brew pub, cider house, lots of other restaurants and dining options, to name a few. So since this is such a large project, and Kelly kind of talked about this briefly, we believe the only way for it to be successful is to take the elephant one bite at a time approach. And we see this as breaking the project into 4 very distinct phases. So phase 1, we see as the phase 1, day 1, meaning that as soon as we close on the property, we'd like to begin the task of cleaning up the site and beautification right away. We want to do this by removing a lot of the old existing car parts and pieces, other debris, the litter that's been scattered throughout the property over the past several decades. This would also include installing new landscaping along the frontages of Del Rio and El Camino Real. We would also want to provide proper tree care and maintenance to preserve all the old heritage oak trees on the property, and install some temporary facilities like a project office, temporary restrooms, maybe a security station to help activate the site and our project. In addition, we'd also like to include establishing an equipment and material staging areas, as well as allowing for some small recreational lodging and use to help start the TOT day 1. And so we do want to, again, in phase 1, start to already incorporate some activities, outside of the phase 2 development areas, so people can start enjoying the site. Let's see here, moving on. Here we are. So phase 2 will focus on building the commercial areas along El Camino Real, as well as the permanent recreational lodging sites shown highlighted in blue. Also establishing site circulation, site access, and the required offsite improvements will be completed during this phase of the project. And once all of the areas in blue are highlighted, the project will be available, fully open and operational, and will include these buildings here, which is the condos over retail, which will be along the El Camino Real corridor. You'll start to have the food, different various food and cuisine. The craft beverages will be on site as well, like wine. We're looking at a winery, small microbrew, coffee roaster, a craft cider, kombucha house, fresh juice bar, and maybe even a distillery. The overnight lodging will start taking place. And then we will also start incorporating some of the lodging in the open spaces, which is shown here. And those types of lodging are going to include, we're hoping to do some kind of overwater bungalows where we're actually floating the units over the water. That use would be here in the purple highlighted area that is circled in red. One of my favorites is creating a vintage VW village by bringing in some old VW vintage buses and campers to have people come and stay. And there's lots of people who want to reconnect. There's nostalgic about their old VW camper and would be really interested in renting one for a night. And so we're looking at that particular lodging use to happen down in this red shaded area below the RV lodging. Glamping. So we're looking at also doing a glamp ground, which would be in the yellow shaded area on the site plan. And these are very energy efficient. They're metal sided. They're beautiful. And the areas that these types of units have gone in, they've had 90 to 95% occupancy. So the interest is huge. Next, we're looking at also including an Airstream, what we're calling our Airstream City, which is going to be located in the green shaded area here on the site plan. Again, people are very nostalgic for the Airstreams, and they're beautiful, and we want to create a variety of lodging types. So that way, everybody kind of likes to do things differently and give them options to do it. And then kind of, finally, something that we really love is this Boxcar Hotel. We're looking at putting the Boxcar Hotel along the top of the amphitheater, so people could rent these out as like a box seat to watch a show, if you will. And again, they create an appeal. People really love these types of units, and we like the reuse and recyclability of this type of design and structure as well. Additionally, the entertainment center will also be built. Here we see lots of different uses happening. It's a very large entertainment center. We've seen these built in Fresno and other areas and have been very, very successful. They would include indoor virtual golf. You would see some bowling, some high-tech digital bowling. It's really cool what they're doing at bowling alleys these days. Indoor music rooms. There will be arcades, billiards, and obviously, a place to enjoy some adult beverages as well. And then also, this is kind of what we're proposing. This is what we're proposing this center will look like. The top right rendering is a rendering of the actual center, but I think it'll be a mix between what you see on the top left and what you see on the right as far as color and scale. So then we move on to phase 3. For phase 3, it will create that residential buffer with affordable by design housing along the top of Del Rio Ranch. This will create a visual, geographic, sound, and light buffer for the existing residential neighborhood to the east and north of Del Rio Ranch by starting with, or prior to starting with our larger, more centralized commercial construction portion of the project. And these are, we're looking at an agrarian farmhouse style, if you will. And then once that's completed and we have that buffer in, then we'll start focusing on the larger commercial construction of the project, which is highlighted here in the white box. And that will include the conference center, which will look like this, or very similar. We'll also want to include some operable walls so that this can be opened up and it can be a COVID-friendly use. So that way, I mean, we're kind of planning for the future nowadays. You have to. We want it to be an indoor-outdoor, fully open up so we can get fresh air through here, and then be able to partition it into various sections so you can have maybe multiple events going on, or different. You can have a speaker or speaker series on different topics happening at the same time. And then here's our idea of the outdoor amphitheater is more for a small local venue where you have small local artists who would come in. Maybe it's an acoustic set, maybe it's a Shakespeare festival, maybe it is, the high school band, they want to come and do a performance, or maybe it's a dance or theater class that wants to come in and do a performance. We have hired a sound engineer who've done a lot of these. And, there are all kinds of different ways to mitigate the sound through different, design and wall screening. And the thing that she said that they're finding is very successful now is they actually design into the audio equipment unadjustable levels. So let's say the city says, hey, our threshold for noise is 100 decibels. Then what they'll do is they'll design into the engineering and software of the sound system that you cannot exceed 90 decibels. So that way, you'll never go above the threshold. So there's plenty of ways to mitigate this. And obviously, we're going to work with our sound engineer, we're going to work with the city, and we'll definitely be in compliance with all the city ordinances regarding sound, noise, and hours, for the venue to operate. Next would be the parking structure. I think Kelly touched on this briefly. We want to make sure that the parking structure is well disguised, if you will. We want it to be very similar in look to the retail and entertainment center that's on El Camino. So that way, when you're traveling down Del Rio, it's not an eyesore. It's not like the typical parking garage that you see in other cities. We really want to integrate it into the overall building design. And then the boutique hotel, again, it's that agrarian look that we're going for. We want to make sure that there's a nice pool as well. And, this is kind of our concept for the hotel. And then, my favorite slide in this whole presentation is, what are the community benefits? How does the residents of Atascadero benefit from a project like this? And also, how will the visitors of Atascadero benefit from a project like this? And so the first is the project will provide a place for fun, leisure, and relaxation, as well as a safe, clean, family-friendly entertainment center and environment for Atascadero residents and guests to enjoy. The project will generate a large visitor and tourism base for the city. The project will provide lots of indoor and outdoor amenities, not currently in Atascadero at the moment, or even in the county for that matter. The project will have a conference center for North County residents to hold community events and celebrations. The project will be the first large-scale experiential commercial center and resort in all of San Luis Obispo County. The project will also provide a safe place for local youth groups to gather and have fun, and provide a means for reducing recreational and teenage drug use. The project will create opportunities for community gatherings such as plays, shows, local concerts, performances for local schools, and even special events. The project will provide the attractor factor for drawing new businesses to Atascadero. The project will provide new employment opportunities for on-site restaurants and retail vendors and local retail vendors. The project will supply more affordable by design housing for Atascadero in the county of San Luis Obispo, which it so desperately needs. The project will help off-site Atascadero small businesses to grow and flourish and benefit from it as well. The project will attract and retain local businesses to stay here in Atascadero. And the project will add value to the surrounding areas, including the adjacent commercial office park parcel to the north. We're hoping that because this center goes in, that might be enough of an economic incentive for our neighbor to the north to move forward with the project that they're proposing, because it would be a benefit, an added benefit to the city as well. And with that said, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to share this truly amazing project and vision for Atascadero to help Atascadero grow, strengthen, and build our small town community together. With that, I'd be happy, and our team would be happy to answer any questions from DRC members.
Thank you, Ted. That was a good presentation. I think I recognize some of those photos. Does anybody, does any of the committee members have any questions of the applicant before we open up public comment? Dennis.
Yeah, very nice presentation. You know, something that I've always commented on for a very long time is who do we design for and who do we provide for within our community? And there's always this kind of mix between, is it for tourism or is it going to be for our residents? And as I look at this as a vision, I'm seeing that you're accomplishing both at the same time. And that's a really nice mix to see and understand. So I congratulate you on that. One thing that kind of popped in my mind when you were talking about the use of the property is it envisioned that a group or could somehow rent the facility for a night, or I mean the entire facility. For instance, grad night is very difficult in our community to deal with, and we try to provide grad night for our high school, but it seems to me like the whole facility that you have as one would be a perfect grad night for high school. And so I'm kind of intrigued if there's going to be any potential for a large rental for one group, let's say, over a period of time. Really impressed with what's going on. As far as the amphitheater goes, obviously we're concerned about noise to the neighborhood. Has it been considered the effects of noise, the ambient effects of noise from the highway? I live within a quarter mile of the highway. At nighttime, I can hear it as clear as day. And so I want to turn that discussion 180 degrees from the neighborhood to the highway, and making sure that the amphitheater and all these outdoor uses aren't going to be negatively impacted by that noise of that highway. I just, again, very, very, very impressed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. So I think I heard two questions in there, so I want to answer them. The first question is, absolutely, we see this, especially the conference center. We see conference center would be a wonderful place to hold, the proms, the junior proms or senior balls and homecoming. That's the ideal place for that. And then grad night would be additionally, that would be more of the entertainment center. That would be the ideal place for that. And of course, we would welcome, it's almost, if you make that a condition of the approval, that's something that we really would want to have happen for the community. That's exactly why we're doing this project. And so the other question that I heard was in response to noise, and in both directions. We want to make sure that we're creating a sound, solution that will not be very intrusive to the existing neighborhood. And then the other is, it's got to be good enough to where the noise from the freeway isn't going to disrupt what's happening. And so two answers to that. The first is that I think the location of where we're proposing to place the amphitheater is perfect based on what's surrounding it. So we have these large commercial buildings that are basically acting as a buffer between the amphitheater and Highway 101, which will allow for some buffering and will allow for a sound experience at the amphitheater that should meet and exceed expectation, while I think we can also achieve, mitigation measures to reduce the sound intrusion into the neighborhood based on the design of the sound system, and also based on, engineering some different, things into the amphitheater to help bounce, reduce, or block sound into the areas we do not want the sound going into. The other thing that we're very fortunate of is where this is located. The way that the natural topography of the slope is such that the noise would hit the slope and bounce back towards Highway 101. And so if this was the land across the street, it would be very hard to do that. But because of where we're proposing the amphitheater, our sound engineer, that was the first thing that she noticed, was she was like, oh, this really makes a lot of sense. So, that was very encouraging to us. And there's going to be a very in-depth sound study and analysis done. We do have the noise levels from the freeway from the previous noise study that was done by Walmart. So we've already provided that to our sound engineer. And so she's making sure that that is part of her overall analysis and design for our sound system.
Yeah, I was very appreciative to hear the governor that you discussed as putting on the sound system through the software, that it can be controlled by setting a maximum limit. And
yes,
that's very good.
She says it's so much so that if for some reason it exceeds, you're able to remotely shut it off, like literally shut off this. Like you just lost your event because whatever you did, if you found a way around it, you're done. Like it's all done remotely now. You can get it on your iPhone. You can see, is the concert levels meeting? Because what you do is you have to have a contract with whoever's doing it, or the other way to do it is they have to use our sound technicians. And so there's different ways that you can mitigate by the way that you set up the contract and who actually is running the sound system. But I love the idea of being able to sit at home and turn off the system if I don't like what's going on.
Any additional questions from committee members for the applicant? Susan?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple. Ted, in the drawing that you have provided about 2 or 3 slides back, it shows a walking pathway circumnavigating the site and moving in and out of various features. In the materials that we saw in the overview sketch today, I did not see any kind of walking path. Is a walking path still part of the plan?
Yes, it absolutely is. It's just, there's so much happening. It's one of those things like we had to figure out all the grading. When we put the walking path in initially, it really didn't take into consideration the grading, all the different roads. So now that we have the roads, we will be providing that in our package for Planning Commission. So you will see that. Just unfortunately, with where we're at, with what we had to submit for DRC versus what we had to submit for Planning Commission, we were kind of limited with getting as much in as we possibly could based on the timelines, that we're having to work with.
Sure. Okay. And then the parking lot. I thought I recalled from when this came to council that the first floor of that building was going to be commercial, and then the parking was going to be above it. Did I misunderstand that? Is that yes or no? Is that the plan?
So it's a little bit of both. We don't see the entire first level of the garage to be completely used with a retail or commercial use. What we may do is incorporate some smaller little commercial use on the bottom to kind of provide a mask, to the parking garage. You see that, I think in downtown SLO, they kind of did a little bit of that where they put some of their city offices below the parking garage, but not the entire parking garage. So, we're still fleshing out those details with our design team, but that's something that I would really like to see. I think that really does provide that high quality, visual and kind of mask the garage. So anything we can do to make that garage look less like a parking garage and more like a regular building, that's part of the plan.
Great. And I also appreciate that we like the site itself, not looking like one large parking lot.
Yeah.
The big improvement. And then lastly, in terms of parking, the parking garage is phase 3, as you outlined. So as you have the entertainment center up and running and are working on the other parts, will there be parking available, surface or otherwise, so that users of the entertainment center will be able to park surface on site and not be clogging up the Mission Hills parking lot?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's part of our phase 1 plan, is to come in and grade. I think I showed a whole section of grading. So basically, where the conference center will be and where the parking garage will be, I mean, those are large surfaces, that we can use temporarily for parking. What we'll have to do is the garage will have to go in before we do, any of the other commercial uses. We see the garage going in first, then we're going to do the hotel, then we'll do the commercial center, and then we'll finish with the amphitheater. That's the way that we see it happening.
Okay.
And it's because of parking. It's for that exact reason.
Great. Thank you for the attention to that attention to the phasing.
Any more questions from committee members? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment. If you're wanting to speak at public comment, please call 669-900-6833, or you can simply raise your hand and we will look to any of the participants looking to speak on this item.
Looks like first we have Michael Manchak.
Go ahead, Michael. You might need to unmute. I know it's Control-A, but I don't remember how to unmute the phone. What option is that?
I think it's *6 on the phone.
Okay.
There we are. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for that. So good afternoon. My name is Mike Manchak. I'm a North County resident, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm really excited to be working with the Cal Coastal Communities team, a local company that is creating amenities and affordable housing in Atascadero. I'm especially excited that its projects have positive impacts that are helping to address some of the challenges that Atascadero continues to face in its economy. For many years, I led a local countywide economic development organization, a nonprofit, that helped businesses and local government create a more balanced and healthier economy. It's with this experience to help the community that I have what I believe is a unique perspective on our local economy, both the city and the county, and then also ways in which we can help to address our challenges that we face in the community by creating ultimately more economic balance. I've learned a lot about Atascadero over the years and its economy through both strategies and resources, but really they come down to things such as helping the community better understand its economy, number one. Number two is helping to measure and plan for a better economy. And then lastly, growing and attracting businesses, especially good jobs, high wage jobs, for which are lacking in the community. As you know, and we've all talked about for many years, that Atascadero faces what's called a jobs housing imbalance. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But as Atascadero continues to address this jobs housing imbalance that I've mentioned, this is especially important as our businesses recover from the impacts of COVID-19, as well as a worsening housing shortage, and then the need for more jobs located in the city. So Atascadero's economic challenges are sometimes faced or looked upon as the jobs housing imbalance, and then a lack of diversification in the economy. So both of those combined. It's these challenges that cause many residents to not be able to live and work in the city. So sometimes these residents are working far distances, And of late, we're starting to even lose some residents because of a lack of high wage jobs located in the city. To have more jobs within the city limits is very important because the city and its residents will both benefit. But fewer high wage jobs create fewer taxes collected from spending outside of the city. So we really need to address this. And I know the city has been working on this for a long time and is making headway. But ultimately, fewer resources for essential community services that are paid by those taxes. So what's the solution to a better Atascadero economy? Well, it really is, the short answer is, the community needs to support creating and attracting more businesses, more affordable housing for workforce, and also creating more community amenities. We want this a place, I think we'll all agree, we want this as a place where people want to live, they want to spend their money in, and they want to invest in. Just kind of in closing here, approximately 2 years ago, we surveyed business owners both inside and outside the city. And we asked those owners what it would take to grow their businesses in Atascadero, or in some cases, bring their business to Atascadero. But at every single response I heard, they indicated that Atascadero needs more entertainment and eating options for their employees, as well as to address the need for more affordable housing for them and their families. These key solutions would really positively impact both hiring and retaining employees, for which, if anyone reads the paper now, they're realizing that's one of the biggest challenges facing businesses. So in short, we need to maximize the city's competitiveness for the benefit of businesses and residents. And let's help those residents and visitors spend their dollars in Atascadero instead of elsewhere, and then create the reasons for them to do so. But it's really projects like this that's discussed in this meeting that will help to address the challenges facing the city's economy by creating more entertainment and shopping for locals and visitors, creating lodging that will improve the larger visitor tax base and improve more affordable housing. So in closing, this is the kind of quality project that I think Atascadero will benefit from, will create a more competitiveness with other cities and counties, and also serve the needs of the community and its businesses. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have anybody else from the public wishing to speak? I don't see anybody raising their hand. Do we have anything to read into public comment, Kelly?
Yes, I believe we've received one email. I think Jessica's going to read it.
Yes, we received one email from Scott Huffman with Reed Investments. And he says, "Dear Chairperson Newsom, Vice Chairperson Funk, and committee members, we own and manage the Mission Oaks Plaza Shopping Center directly across the street from this project. We have reviewed the proposed design concepts and would like to provide the following comments. Number one, calibration of the phasing will be essential to the success of the project, and we recommend the city mandate the amount of each product type that can be developed before other portions must commence construction. For example, resort versus residential versus commercial. We also suggest the city include a timeframe for when the parking garage would need to be constructed in any phasing matrix. While we understand this is not a design component, we simply raise the issue to ensure the phase improvements maintain architectural harmony and cohesiveness. Number two, based on the staff report, the applicant will install a signalized intersection aligning the RV Resort access road with the Mission Oaks service driveway. We fully support this improvement and believe it will be essential for the proper functioning of the primary entrance to the RV Resort. And lastly, number three, this ownership fully supports the adjustments to the residential district and changes to the circulation plan. We feel the proposed development provides a variety of destination uses that complement the existing neighborhood while providing new and exciting reasons to visit the area. Regards, Scott J. Huffman.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment and we'll open it up to discussion. Let's go, Jeff.
Yeah, first off, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased with the presentation, the great presentation. I think overall the concept is sound, and it almost seems like a shotgun effect with all the different types of camping types. But if all this can be developed in an orderly fashion, I think that it will be extremely beneficial to our community and give us especially a place for our youth to be able to go. There's sorely those types of things are sorely lacking in our community, and that's the effect of my children. So I think something like this would be very highly beneficial to our community. Overall, I think that I like the layout. I do think that circulation wise, if they're not going to be able to allow right or left out at Obispo, there's got to be an easier way for them to get people out to El Camino, because that will be the main road. Obviously, it's going to be the widest road, Obispo Road, and hopefully, I'm sure that they can figure that out. So anyway, those are my comments for now.
Thank you. Emily?
Yes, thank you to the applicant for a great presentation and a really good looking project. I've been spending a lot of time in Chico Paradise area lately, and they've got a development up there called Miriam Park that's very similar in its kind of mixed entertainment uses with some residential and commercial, and it seems like it's working really well. One of the things they're doing up there that I didn't see specifically, but might be a good addition is outdoor movies. They're doing kind of a drive-in thing, but the amphitheater here seems like it would be well suited for that type of activity as well. We have similarly warm evenings, so I think that could be a really great addition. Generally, I like the site layout. I think that the circulation seems to make sense. I do like the idea of better aligning that primary commercial access point to the south with the residential above, so that they don't have to contend with challenges at Obispo. I understand as well, I think the amphitheater is probably in the best location for the site. And I like the architectural design theme. I like all the RV and cabin lodging ideas. I do have a question, and maybe this is for the applicant, maybe for the staff, I'm not sure. Would all of those potentially come in for DRC review later all together, or would those come through individually?
Ellie, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what they propose and when they propose it. Certainly, we could sort of require that come in all together to make sure that there's some consistency in terms of their plan, whether or not they install them all at the same time or not.
Okay. That was kind of what I was wondering, is how do we, I think all of the ideas are beautiful. It would, I think, behoove us just to find a way to make it feel cohesive. So if they came in for review together, I think that would be helpful. I also think screening of the RV area is going to be really important. So the landscape plans, I think, are going to be really important. And I'm assuming each phase then would have a landscape plan required to be submitted with it, and it would get reviewed at that time.
Yes, that's correct.
And on that similar note, the water features seem, sorry about that, super interesting. I do share the concern for safety with regard to the pond. I'm not quite sure how to address that, but I like what the applicant's proposing to do with the pond. So hopefully staff can work with them to find a way to make it work. Is there a pool proposed with the RV and lodging portion?
Mariah, I don't know if you can let Ted speak again. We haven't seen a pool as part of their plans, although they do have that area adjacent to the check-in building that hasn't been completely designed yet. I believe there is a pool associated with the hotel that's part of the proposal.
Okay. I guess my only concern would be the inclination for people staying long-term to use the pond as a swimming pool. And its proximity to El Camino Real, that might be those two things might not really go well together. I have no further questions, just want to say that I like the project and hope we can get all that built.
Thank you, Emily. Dennis, Susan, do you have some last minute discussion, or can we move on to the checklist that Kelly has for us?
No, I just, obviously the project team, they're very good critical thinkers, and there are little things that we could pick on, but again, they are working. There's differences between the slides, between what was shown by the presentation and what the city had. I mean, there's little things like that, but these people know what they want and what they're going to do. And so there are some little things that might need to be dressed up, but I don't doubt that they will deal with it correctly. I can see a lot of faith in it. And I heard one thing that I really appreciated hearing, and that is, why would people want to come to Atascadero versus San Luis Obispo or Paso Robles or anything like that? And if we design the same way they do, why would people want to do that? And a facility like this is a one of a kind type of thing within our county, and this type of facility will distinguish us from other communities, and that I think is extremely critical. And I again, very impressed.
Thank you, Dennis. The only things that I had some questions on and clarification was going to be on proposed time frame. How far out do we think the different phases are going to be from each other? When are they looking to do phase one? And then thereafter was the timeline for those additional phases. And then only other concern was the compatibility with the neighborhoods as we're having that large amount of traffic going out on Obispo Road, making sure that their traffic analysis, noise analysis, those things are conducive to a project of this scope. I like all of the design ideas. It's nice to see it finally come up from being just a Walmart vacant property to something that has potential to happen. So that I'm greatly appreciative of. Kelly, you gave us a list of questions that you wanted us to clarify or give you guidance on. And perhaps my question can be answered in 1 through 5.
I will say, just in terms of the traffic analysis, I'll let Ted speak to phasing and project timeline. They're working with a traffic consultant that does a lot of traffic work in the city, and so is very familiar with development and how the city roads function. And they have been given direction to sort of include, build out traffic scenarios in analyzing all of those intersections and how they function. So we're fairly confident that traffic analysis will have all the information that we need before Planning Commission.
Okay, and I think that'll lead to this first topic, site concept layout, including circulation. I think all of us on this committee want to make sure that the circulation is appropriate. One of the things I did note on there is with the amphitheater, did not seem like there was vendor access or a commercial area if we bring in a large performer that needs to offload sound or any additional things. Seem like it would be impeding the traffic flow. Don't know if that's something that gets looked at, or if we have all the equipment that's just housed indoor on site, but just making sure that the vendor access for events isn't inhibiting the functionality of the project. What do you need from us, Kelly, on this one?
So in terms of the site concept and layout, I think we're looking for discussion items sort of related to neighborhood compatibility in relocating the residentially zoned portion of the property, in switching the public road to the Obispo Road alignment rather than sort of the El Camino Hook alignment that was part of the original plan, and anything else in general with the site layout that might conflict with our design standards or neighborhood compatibility issues.
Can you put the map back up so we can discuss that? And the signals. I think there is a signal determined to be at El Camino. And
So in the current specific plan, there's a signal here and then the road hooks up and sort of connects near this existing driveway as the dedicated public road. And so the applicants are proposing to shift that dedicated public road to align with Obispo, which would link to future residential development to the south, and then provide that secondary connection that we have some direction on to sort of even out and make a little bit easier and more direct down to El Camino, where they'd have a signalized intersection.
my opinion on Obispo Road is the more traffic on it with that lodging, I would be concerned about pedestrian, depending on if you have the glamping, depending on what's on that back row, the more traffic you have going in and out of Obispo, the more challenging you're going to have with pedestrian crossing. So having it as a through fare and being used like the front road, like El Camino, when people are exiting or in a hurry to get from point A to B to get to Del Rio.
Yeah, and I did want to note that part of the applicant's design will be sort of street sections and how we're going to plan that. So on this plan, the gray areas for the roads are sort of shown at the maximum right-of-way or easement area that we would want as a city. That does not mean that it's going to be paved all the way out to 60-foot width. So what we're thinking for Obispo Road is a travel lane in each direction, potentially some on-street parking to help facilitate just parking throughout the area, and then some sidewalks. So we're really looking at a typical local road that's not very wide, with potentially more narrow lanes than what we're seeing in the rest of the development to discourage RVs and things like that from traveling down that road. So it is not going to be as wide as it seems to be depicted on the plans. In terms
That's good. Looks like the biggest road there is.
Yeah, it'll probably end up being one of the smallest, but we are reserving, because it is a public road, we're reserving the 60-foot right-of-way consistent with our road standards in the city.
Okay, I saw 45-mile-an-hour zone in there. Okay. Dennis, go ahead.
Circulation, I'm very critical about and concerned about circulation. And for me, how I would approach the design of circulation in this area is I would make it the simplest and easiest way in which I want people to go out onto, make it out off the site. That's where my emphasis would place. I always jokingly say I put a hose in the ground and the ants are going to crawl on top of the hose because it's the easiest path for them to take. People are the same way in their cars. So if we want them to go a certain way, then we make that the most efficient and simplest way for people to get in and out of the project. And if we don't want people going out onto Del Rio, then we make it difficult for them to go out on Del Rio. So there's a madness to circulation design in my mind, and that's how you accomplish it.
Always mute myself. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's critical not to be dumping huge amounts of traffic onto Obispo Road because going right is problematic. And going left is has sightline issues, and even if you prohibit it, people are going to do it anyway. So make the alternative easier so that that just isn't such an attractive nuisance. That will help. In general, I like the layout. I love the way that they're sensitive to the topography of the site. I do want to see some careful thought about the pond. You hate to fence it, but you also have to be sensitive to creating something that's an attractive hazard. So I leave that to the wisdom of the city. I think that I'm comfortable with the phasing. I particularly was heartened to hear the entertainment center showing up in, the very beginning of phase 2, so that there's something fun happening. Because that to me is the major benefit to the community, is having that big entertainment center. And that, and the amphitheater will be nice going forward later, but that's the biggie. And I don't want to see that end up being last and end up being something else. It does seem to be central to the applicant's business model that to have that entertainment early as a bit to make the rest of their lodging plans work. So I am comfortable with all of that, but was very pleased to see it.
Emily?
I agree with everything previously said. I like the layout. I like that it works with the existing topography as best it can, and concur with the concerns for prioritizing the southerly connection to El Camino for a majority of the traffic.
Okay. Jeff?
Really happy to hear from Kelly that this was showing the right of way width and not the actual road. I was quite concerned. I was calculating in my head how wide these lanes were going to be, and picturing 2 lanes in each direction. And so yeah, that's great. I do think we need to encourage everybody to use the El Camino exit. If they have to turn on to right on to Del Rio, that becomes a problem, and especially somebody that's not from the area. They should be well signed so people know how to get out. I think that's important for that.
So I guess that will lead us to number 2, Kelly, neighborhood compatibility components, including amphitheater location and landscapes concepts. I would ask that the applicant is doing neighborhood outreach and getting influence from the neighbors of what are they looking for? How do they see it affecting them? Obviously, we see it on a piece of paper. It's harder to really get a feel for it. So I'd ask that there is a condition in there in which there is neighborhood outreach and input in the design phases of all aspects of this project. I don't see any raised hands. Who wants to give input on that? Susan?
Yeah, I think in terms of neighborhood compatibility, I think that moving the residential component of this to the location where it is creates a buffering that I think is very helpful. It certainly will be a lot more residential densely very close to the nearest folks. They're across Rio Rita Road, but it will be residential, and it won't be big. It won't be 18-wheelers rolling in goods all hours of the day and night. So yeah, I think that works well. I hear all the concerns about the amphitheater, and I think the sound study will help clarify those things. And I think it offers great amenities for both the immediate neighborhood and the community at large.
Yeah, I had asked a question earlier about the hatched area along Rio Rita Road, and you can see that there's another flag note there saying about having a 10-foot wide landscape screening buffer. There is a cross section that I came across somewhere in the plans in which there is a retaining wall concepts, actually somewhat similar to what we discussed at the Planning Commission last week about having, instead of one large wall, have 2 smaller walls. And that's what that particular cross section shows. And I believe that is the location in which they're talking about putting that. So there might be a 6-foot wall from Rio Rito down to a landscape level, and then another level down to the pads for the homes or in that area. So I do think they're trying to provide some type of visual buffering for the houses that, or for the people who live along Rio Rita by trying to drop that area down lower. So I believe there's compatibility there. And and again, based on what was explained about the amphitheater, I think that I'm kind of thinking we're going to have a kind of a county bowl type thing, and it's not even close to that. I don't see it being that type of venue based on what the applicants are saying at all.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Emily, Jeff? Oh, there's Jeff. There you are. I have to adjust my screen to see all of you, so I have to like scroll through.
Thankfully, I have a really giant screen, so I get to see all of you at one time.
I'm on my laptop. It's as tiny as tiny gets right now.
As far as, you know, neighborhood compatibility, I really like the fact that the residential has been pushed. In my mind, this is way more compatible than, you know, what we were seeing 15 years ago with the Walmart project. And, you know, there's a lot of grade differential on this site. So we're looking at essentially from Del Rio and El Camino, there's 100 feet of elevation gain up to Rio Rita near the end of the property. So, you know, seems like all those people would be able to easily look over anything that was here. Their views wouldn't be obscured by any of the projects. So you know, and I think that it's going to develop a lot less noise than a Walmart would, and certainly a lot less traffic. So as far as compatibility, I think it's way better than the alternative was.
I'll agree. Okay. On to number 3, architectural design theme. Did you need input from us?
Only if you maybe want to see anything slightly different incorporated, you know, or let them know of any direction on that, or the height of buildings, things of that nature.
My only inclination would be that it's the first rendering and it's still coming. I like the design concepts that they have set forth. I think at this time, I'm not ready to give additional feedback or any of my colleagues.
And it will come back when they're closer to that level of detail for design review, you know, before any permitting. So we will see them again in greater detail. It's just if there's anything overarching that you had comments on, we would.
The thought was, yeah, are they way off? Then comment on that. Are they close? And then come back with details, I think is what we were looking for. And that's why I was saying, hey, thumbs up, kind of heading in the right direction. And we know we have details to come back. Or, hey, we were looking for this to be actual mission style instead, and this is way off, just as an example, you know, so.
It's not a hot pink, so that's a bonus.
Hey, pink is popular. He was a client of mine. I wanted to talk about earlier we had a brief discussion on the height requirements that were being discussed, and then there was a discussion about the hotel across the street. And I'll note that the horizontal distance from the road to the hotel is much greater than at least what the horizontal distance is shown here. Let's, for instance, on the El Camino Real profile, there is no horizontal distance from where you can see the curb to just to the left of the tree. So what will that horizontal distance be from that point to the facade of the building where the 45 feet is going to be? And so I'd be intrigued to understand that better. Whereas again, on the across the street at the hotel, it's, I don't know, but I'm going to say it's 100 feet. But maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. But the buildings right now for me seemed a little blocky. I'm not adverse to that completely, but I would like to see some more articulation around the windows. Right now, they're just kind of shown kind of as a kind of an industrial side type feel to it, in the sense that we have windows, a window, and nothing that kind of breaks that up, whether it be awnings or covers or something like that. And then the shape of the buildings are very familiar with other projects that have been proposed in terms of the wedges that we have on, like on the upper floor. There are times when it's critical to have that if you're trying to use clear story windows and try to get solar access into buildings. I can understand that. But this is, this look right here for me is, you know, kind of almost 1950s, 60s type look to it. And is kind of coming back, I think, in some way. But I don't know if it could be dressed up a little bit more.
Jeff, Emily. Saw them.
I'll go first. Yeah, I actually really like this design. You know, maybe it's an engineer inside of me. I like clean, simple lines. But to me, I think it looks pretty consistent with everything else that's going on in the area, especially some of the newer developments that we've seen in this general vicinity. So I think it would be very compatible, and I think they're very handsome buildings myself. So I don't have anything to add, except I will be looking forward to seeing more of the palette of colors and materials and stuff like that as it gets further along.
Emily.
I generally agree. I like the concept. I like the direction they're headed, and am eager to see more details and actual materials when they come back in for individual review.
Okay, Susan.
Yeah, I concur, like, with the general overall thumbs up. A couple of comments. In the preliminary sketches for the residential, I was seeing something that looked like refrigerator white. I would really not like to see that.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I think the way we have this proposed is that the commercial aspects will come back for DRC approval. And then the residential will actually require a conditional use permit once they actually have that fleshed out. So we'll definitely get to dive into that in an even deeper detail when the residential comes before us for review. Great.
And then the other thing that I saw was some use of banners hanging outside of the parking garage. And it reminded me that, I don't want to see these sort of, feather banner sale type things degrading the visual look of the site. And I'd like to see them, or sooner rather than later, have thought as to how the signage for the businesses involved is going to be integrated into the site so that is not intrusive. And that, they're going to want to have some kind of signage, maybe moving signage that promotes new events and things that are happening at their amphitheater. And I just like to see that thought into the design sooner rather than later to avoid unpleasant surprises.
Good point.
Okay. RV lodging and cabin lodging sites. What are you looking for from us?
Well, I think what we've already heard is that screening is important of that area, and that if the glamping sites come back in, you kind of want to see them holistically as one submittal, whether or not they get installed that way, design consistency. So it would just be anything in addition to those two comments, if anybody has anything else.
I've never seen glamping facilities before, so I don't know kind of how, what they typically like, but there seemed to be, at least on the information that was provided to us, pretty much a lack of privacy on the lower slide right here. And I've always kind of thought of glamping being more of a kind of a camping type, or more of a kind of a private cabin over here and a private cabin over there, versus kind of in this type of layout right here. So that was a little interesting to see, but again, I've never seen it before. I also had kind of a concern about how it's going to function when people rent these facilities for the night, I guess they're going to park their cars in the parking area. But how do they move from the parking area to these locations? I know where the hotel is, it looks like there's a roundabout in the center where people will check in and can drive out. But let's say, for instance, I'm in the glamp ground area, and I'm parking in the corner over by El Camino Real and Del Rio. How do I move from one point to the other point? Is there going to be any hospitalities, golf carts or something like that for people to move around to take their gear or their suitcases from one point to another? Seemed a little problematic, but again, I believe that these people will think through it because it's part of their business model. It's not going to work unless it's thought of critically.
Yeah, they have added some parking spaces towards that along the edge of the RV parking resort that I believe are anticipated to serve the glamping areas. But that definitely will be looked at when we get a more detailed site plan in terms of pedestrian circulation.
Okay, now that you mentioned possible parking on Obispo, perhaps that's, where they're being allocated. Anything else to add? No? Okay. Water features, I think we already discussed that somewhere in with the RV lodging and down in the front, because I think, isn't one have water camping feature? Is that on the pond or is that inside the RV lodging area?
No, I think they were hoping to do that on the pond. And
Okay.
I mentioned that if the pond area becomes needed for a stormwater basin, then it won't really be a pond, and they'll kind of come up with a different design theme. But I think their ideal would be to have some sort of water feature, such as a pond, available to create sort of a different experience, glamping experience around.
And I think pond is a kind of a bad word to use. I mean, for instance, the lakes was brought forward as an example of ponds, but those are extremely shallow ponds, and they actually, I think, are more stormwater features than anything else. So I would imagine the depth of this pond being very, very shallow, and typically you don't have to fence if you have basically 1 foot of water within an area. And so you would still, even with a foot of water, you'd still get the reflection action that would be coming off of it from the sky and so on, to make it look like a deeper facility. I don't know, but I would imagine that would be the way you resolve the issue, is that you keep it shallow. But then again, it might not be the most efficient use of water being shallow because of that evaporation.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Kelly, and Phil, did we answer all your questions and give you guidance?
I think so.
All right. We look forward to seeing this project go on to the next phases and the Walmart site get to be developed soon. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm waiting for your timelines, Ted Lawton. All right. Well, thank you for the presentation, and thanks for all of the hard work that went into it. It truly shows that you invested a lot of time and energy. So thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time here today. I'm glad to hear that your daughter is doing much better.
Yeah, me too. I think I lost about 10 years off my life in one day.
I believe it. I've been there. It's tough.
She's not even 3 yet. I don't know if I'm gonna make it through the teenage years.
So I do have one question. So are we going to get a summary, or I think last time we had a vote? Is there a vote that'll take place to move forward to Planning Commission, or where are we at with the process?
Kelly, I don't think this requires a vote.
Yeah,
right?
we don't normally do a vote. I think with the Dove Creek community input, we felt that it was important to formalize the action a little bit more. So what I'm hearing from you is you have a number of comments. You're proceeding with moving the application onto Planning Commission, and you will see pieces of the project when they come back.
That's the important thing, is we're not coming back to DRC. We can move forward to Planning Commission, where we'll come back to DRC with the individual components, as they get more details. But and actually that brings me to an important topic that I'm going to talk about during my director's report, which is just the DRC in general, and you know, what discretion the committee has as DRC and what that action means, and whether those actions can be appealed and all that bit. I'll talk about that, though, separate from this project in more of a general sense, because I want to just kind of air out some concerns that have come up on past actions on that whole basis.
But I also just want to say, yes, Ted will get you a summary of
yes.
the comment list.
Yes, yeah, and those comments you can continue working on as we move forward to commission and city council.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you. Dennis, you got one more thing on this?
I kind of had a question about that same area, and we recently had a discussion at the commission about zoning codes and the
Hey, Dennis.
the
Sorry.
time period.
Can you wait for just 1 minute? I want to close his project. Are you good with Del Rio Ranch?
I'm wondering about the phasing of Del Rio Ranch and how it fits in within the discussion we had about DRC approvals and how long they last.
Okay, so let's go ahead and have Phil address that, and Kelly.
So yeah, actually a great topic, because we actually are bringing a zoning amendment forward to the city council right now. Actually, that'll be coming to their May 25th city council hearing that already came through the planning commission. And what that does is just establish a 1-year approval time for design review committee. But this project's a little bit different because it's going to have a specific plan amendment, and it's going to have a master plan of development. Those have different timeframes to them. And when we establish a timeframe in our DRC actions, that's for projects that don't have other discretionary actions that stand alone. And I'm going to talk about that at length a little further in my director's report about how that works and the two different ways that design review committee actions go when they are standalone or whether they are part of a recommendation to an advisory body, which is a big distinction. But in this case, it will be the master plan of development, the conditional use permit, and the specific plan that will set the timelines for the entitlements, the land use entitlements that will be on this project. But a recommendation for other DRC actions will be a 1-year timeframe that'll be built into the code. But really, the design review committee doesn't offer, it's important for everyone to understand that design review committee does not offer land use entitlement. And so it's not a commission, it's not a hearing body, it is a committee that's an advisory body. And that's a really important distinction. It's a little different. Again, I'm going to elaborate on that just a little bit when we have our separate discussion.
My understanding too is because this is the former Walmart site plan, and in the scope of it, it's already got its own set of, like you said, master plan development specific plans that are tied to that property itself.
Yeah.
And because of the scope of it, and
Yeah.
this is the first time we've deviated from the Walmart design, that this one needed a little bit more input in design review being design. How does that fit the community, and what is the applicant looking for? So thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Ted Lawton and your team. And we'll go on to the next committee member comments and reports. Sounds like Dennis, your comment is you want more information from Phil in regards to how the DRC functions, how it handles projects.
No, I just, again, we had this discussion, but I hear what Phil's saying in terms of the use permit or the discretionary permits that are being associated with this project. And I'm sure that I'm hoping that there's going to be some type of timeline that will be brought forward to the commission, saying that the phasing has to occur within a particular time, or there's some type of sunset that or some type of process in which the plan needs to come back, because I don't know if we want this to last 5 years to come to fruition or 10 years to come to fruition. I mean, what type of timeline do we want? I mean, we have the theater in town as an example of a master plan project that hasn't come to fruition at all.
Yes, Walmart property, an example. It's been a while coming. Any other committee members' comments or reports at this time? Okay, we'll open it up to director's report. That's all you, Bill.
Thank you. I will start by saying we have delivered to you very, very significant projects for your last 2 hearings to discuss. Very heavy topics, very big changes to both of these neighborhoods we looked at in the last couple of weeks. So we're going to give you a rest. We don't have another one of these projects coming up in the near future. I don't have a date for DRC for our next hearing, and I don't have additional items yet on the calendar that are coming forward to design review committee, but I know there's going to be some, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about as other stuff comes forward. But so that's a good thing. Normally I tell you about what's coming up on the calendar, but we just don't have it there. But plenty to come to Planning Commission and City Council. But back to the entitlement discussion, because it's something that has been a topic recently. It's been a topic even before we looked at our last item a couple weeks ago at Dove Creek. And that's why we are recommending a code amendment, a clarification to our design review committee policies in our municipal code to stipulate that there's a 1-year approval date for a design review committee action. And what that applies to is when we are working with an allowed use. For example, somebody wants to put in a new retail building downtown, which is allowed with a construction permit, but we typically like to run those through design review committee so we can comment on the design, kind of like we did with the cargo container project that's the beer garden now. It's being built next to La Plaza. It's an allowed use. It didn't require conditional use permits, so it wasn't required to go to the Planning Commission or City Council. And in a scenario like that, we need to have, some kind of handle on how long does that, if they decided not to build it, does that entitlement last forever? Well, the real story is DRC doesn't offer an entitlement. And when we offer design comments, and it's not a discretionary project, the design comments are supposed to be comments towards their construction permit that they're about to submit. But I think it's been misconstrued in years past that it is an entitlement and that entitlement runs with land and there's no expiration date, which really isn't true. It's really supposed to be right away. So we're nailing that down to 1 year now. But for projects that go forward to Planning Commission and City Council, those Planning Commission and City Council actions, whether they're a conditional use permit, a specific plan, a general plan amendment, a tentative parcel map, any of those other bigger actions, those have their own separate timelines. And so this project will have a timeline for development if it's a conditional use permit, and we do have some flexibility in establishing those timelines with conditions of approval. And we do have ability to condition phases in those timelines. And if they get a vesting tentative parcel map, that can give them even more of a timeline because a vesting map can extend those rights for several years. And that's a whole different long discussion. But the other topic I wanted to get into is appeals. Now, we have been asked a question recently about the Dove Creek project. Can this project be appealed? And an action of the DRC can be appealed if it's an action, again, that doesn't lead to another discretionary recommendation on a discretionary action. So the Dove Creek project, your action on that was simply advisory to the Planning Commission. You didn't offer any land use entitlement. You didn't allow that project to proceed. You simply provided comments. So there's no appealable action. Instead, you're advising to the Planning Commission on recommendations of design, and in that particular case, land use as well. And it's the Planning Commission's action, then it will also be a recommendation to the City Council because it does involve a general plan amendment. So in that scenario, it's going on to these other hearing bodies anyway. So an appeal would be a moot point. Now, however, if it was, for example, the cargo container project downtown or another project that's an allowed use, and there was no follow-up action by the Planning Commission or City Council required, and the DRC gave out design recommendations and voted on an action, technically that action could be appealable and would be appealable to the Planning Commission, and we'd hear that item at the Planning Commission and we'd proceed with that. I hope that sounded clear in my explanation, but if it didn't, I'm happy to answer your questions on that. Dennis.
Dennis.
Files the appeal on an allowable use? How has it become public for someone to say, I don't like this particular look, therefore I want to appeal it? Or is that something that the staff will bring forward and say, we think that this might be controversial based on comments we've received? Therefore, we will ask if it should be appealed, or?
Well, first of all, our design review committee guidelines in our municipal code have guidelines on what should be brought to the design review committee. And that includes multifamily projects, it includes new commercial projects, and so on. For someone to appeal it, they would have to submit an appeal in writing along with the applicable fees that the city requires to formally appeal it, just like they would appeal a planning commission action. There's a section in our municipal code about how an appeal shall be handled for any of our commissions, including the design review committee and the planning commission.
Any more questions? I guess we can adjourn the meeting and call it happy summer. So hope we worked you guys to death, and we'll see you in a month. No, I'm kidding. Everybody enjoy your Memorial Day weekend because it's coming before we know it. And everybody be safe and well. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
See each other in person next time.
I know. I hope so. I miss everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.